Welcome to Ray's Corner. I'm excited to have this person on the show today. I've had some interesting conversations with them about food in particular because I'm a fatty and like, who doesn't like food? But I also have some trips that I need to make thanks to Rae and Gray. They are a lovely little human. Um, but we're not here to talk about food. We're here, well, it could come up. But we're here to discuss their books, their methods, and just their overall awesomeness. So, Rien, welcome to the corner. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, we may end up discussing food if we talk about any of my books in Chicago, because I always do my best in my books to like actually mention places that I like. So we may end up on food.
Listen,
Um,
I have no problem with it.
but yeah,
I should have got
I'm
me a meal on the side though. Now I'm gonna be hungry.
uh I'm Rae and Gray, they them, queer non-binary author of romantic suspense and fantasy and contemporary romance. It's mostly sapphic, so either trans women, non-binary folks, or just lesbians and bi women in general. So it's kind of across the board.
Mhm.
I have 10 books out now somehow. Um, so that's been going pretty well. Yeah.
It has. And I was gonna get to that,
Yeah.
but let's start there. Gender, sexuality, and everything in between shows up in your work with an exclamation point.
Hmm.
And I love that. There's no apologies as it should be. Like just be able to be yourself, exist, and go on about your life, finding romance like everybody else. Um,
Hmm.
let's talk about the ease of normalizing visibility.
Yeah, it's interesting. Is I see a lot of media now. Like, there's obviously even from when I started, because 3 years in publishing now.
Mhm.
Even from when I started back in 2021, the amount of like trans and non-binary visibility in media has like skyrocketed. Some for better, some for worse.
Right.
But when I started, the first book I wrote, Love Kills Twice, which has a non-binary assassin, at the time I was just like, there are like trans and non-binary stuff, but a lot of it was very like gentle and very like, this is the non-binary person, this is their pronouns, and it was very much like a story. It's a lot like a lot of gay and lesbian stuff used to be, is that it used to be like a
Mhm.
kind of like story of the week, talking about their sexuality and this and that. And I just wanted stories where trans and non-binary people could be cool. I want action, I want fantasy, I want this and that, where they're just characters. So that's where I started out with mine, and that's basically true for all of my books. But I've also seen a huge rise from all kinds of books, especially indie. Shout out to indie romance and self-pub,
Yeah.
for making it so it's just way more common to have uh yeah, trans and non-binary characters that are just like living their life and being cool without it kind of being like a lesson for everybody else.
Yeah,
Always gets a little bit awkward. I'm an adult. I'm past my sex ed years, so you know.
definitely. And so, you write again, you said romance, erotica,
Mhm.
fantasy, paranormal, you have your criminals getting their love stories going on, like Love Kills Twice. I love that book.
Yay, thank
Because
you.
it's adorable because Justine is just like, I just, not to give any real spoilers, but there's something that she need done.
Mhm.
And Campbell is like, I got you. They have no problem. And then, there's this, uh-oh, I think I like this person. Crap.
Yeah,
And
you're not supposed to fall in love with the assassin you hire. That doesn't you.
absolutely not. Like, oh no. And it's just really cute. And I love it. And her husband deserved to die. Justine's husband was
It was so funny. I did once see a review that said they really liked the book, but they're like, "Did she really need to kill him?" And I was like, "How much worse do I need to make that man?"
I I don't think like just the scratching the surface was enough for me. I was like,
Yeah, see, that's what I thought, but I was just like, "Man, I gotta make him awful next time." Just making private notes next time I write that. My bad.
right? But like, okay, so most of your books have, this obvious overlap of the bad guys finding love.
Mhm.
What made you decide that this was the type of character you wanted to give your full attention? I'm not
So
complaining. I'm just saying.
I grew up, I really was into like noir
Hmm.
and that genre and stuff growing up, movies, books, like the old classic detective novels and stuff like that. And I always loved the femme fatale. But the
Yes.
the classic femme fatale, the rule of the femme fatale is she never wins. She
Right.
has to
Yeah.
die, she has to lose her power, and this and this and this. And oftentimes though, the femme fatales became femme fatales because society did not let them have power otherwise. She
Mm.
basically had to use her beauty to get what she wants, had to use, sexuality to get what she wants. And Love Kills Twice in particular I was just like, I want the femme fatale to win. I want her to actually be right for once.
Hmm.
And a lot of that entire series, because the Fatal Fidelity series is 4 books, is the background in the romance is who is allowed to do violence and why. Like, why is it permissible for her husband to be abusive to her, but she
Hmm.
can't respond? Why why can the military do this? Why can the police do this? Why can all of these different groups do this? But that people who are being harmed can't respond. So that's kind of like the underlying thing of that. Um, Another book I have, Double Exposure, is about two queer art thieves.
Yes.
And that one
I was
came
gonna
out
get
of
to
me
that
seeing
one.
Ocean's 8 and being like, this wasn't lesbian enough for me. Like it's just it's absolutely a power fantasy. The idea of being somebody who can get away with anything.
Yeah.
And oftentimes the hot or acceptable or popular criminals in media are cishet and white and all this other kind of stuff, and it's just like, well, yeah, of course you get away with everything, you have privilege. That's not fun.
That's very true.
So
No,
yeah, it's definitely just kind of it's a power fantasy, and a lot of my tastes mesh together.
oh, absolutely. And I mean, like I said, I'm not complaining. I love because we do always have the very timid characters who can't win and they have to try and go up against some societal norm which shouldn't exist. And
Hmm.
like at the end of the day, it's just like, well, I couldn't really do anything about it. Or they're painted as the bad guy who
Hmm.
doesn't deserve to win, like you were saying with in noir, which I also love. I did film classes when I was back in my junior college days. Um,
Yes. Nice.
but it's just I love like how it's not even frowned upon in the books. It's just like this is what it is. And like you put a stamp on it, like, okay, so if you don't like it, why are you here?
Yeah, I mean, I think about it like John Wick, super popular series, right? Like everybody in that movie is the assassin, and I don't see anybody going, John Wick really shouldn't be killing people. Why is he
Right.
doing this?
Right.
Um, so
Oh
yeah, it's
my
just kind
gosh,
of the
could you
conceit of
imagine?
noir that it's this kind of world where that is an appropriate response, or it can be, um, which makes it a little more. It's technically romantic suspense. I kind of prefer, if I can, to call it noir romance because I kind of want to separate it from. It's not quite contemporary. It's a world where the morality is like a little to the left.
It's a little warped, quote
Yeah.
unquote.
Um, and on all sides. um, Justine's side, Campbell's side, Campbell's target's side, more again like it would be in a movie, or
Hmm.
it would be in, I don't know, the old Sin City comics or something, where like
Oh,
it looks
yeah.
like our world, but there's a lot more shadow.
Yeah, definitely. Just hitting on double exposure because I enjoyed that book. I just love that they were both doing it wasn't just one side, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? Jillian was raised up through a different method and kind of found that thieving was fun. And
Yeah.
Sloan was like, I don't like my family. And they were like, what can I do? Oh, I have access and money and I'm gonna use it in this way. And it was like, vengeance best served hot and cold.
Hmm. Yeah, and they were fun. So it was really interesting constructing that because I actually wrote that book initially for the Happily Ever After Collective, which was a Patreon. It is in the past tense. It's closed now.
Mm.
Um, but it was delivering books every month to people with different tropes. So the funny thing about that book is that I had already written it as it was, but it was initially supposed to be in the enemies to lovers category, which is fine because it is. Um, the two of them are very much at each other's throats at the start.
Yeah.
But somebody in the second chance romance slot, which had been coming up like right away, had to drop really suddenly because of a family emergency.
Oh.
And the woman who was running Happily Ever After was like, "Is there anybody that has second chance romance?" And I went, "Oh, mine's also second chance romance." And she's like, "Oh my God, I love you. Come here." Uh, so that book release got moved up suddenly like 5 months, um, because of that. So because for anybody who's listening, is the two art thieves, Jillian and Sloane, are rivals because they're both art thieves, but they're also exes because 3 years prior to the start of the book, they had a relationship that went very sour.
Hmm.
So now in the modern day in Chicago, they're trying to steal some photos from each other and end up getting involved in each other's spaces again.
Yep.
Uh, so yeah, that was fun. I love the Chicago Art Museum, which almost all of the places there are almost all the places mentioned in that book are real.
Oh.
All the art's real.
Well,
Um,
yes, love that. And it adds so much more to it when it's like those types of stories where you can include reality
mhm.
and it doesn't feel like, awkward.
Yeah, it's actually a difference, which it's funny because they're both Love Kills Twice, a double exposure set in Chicago. That's where I live. But they're definitely different. I don't mention a lot of real places except for in broad strokes in the Assassin books, because again, it's not reality. It's not really meant to be quite contemporary. But
Mhm.
for double exposure, I wanted it to feel kind of like Ocean's 8. They're at an actual event that they are stealing and everything from. It's the oh my God, which is it? Why do I always forget? 1 second.
Um, the
Oh yeah, the Met Gala.
yeah.
So like they're at like it's the real Met Gala in the real Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, and that's why it feels so real and so fun because you can sink yourself into the media and be like, oh yeah, like it's the fun part of being like, oh yeah, I bet I could steal that. You can't, but we like to think so.
And they were overseas too, all kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Well, at least, in flashback past conversation-y stuff or
Hmm.
whatever. But yeah. Uh, I mean, and the end of the book. Anyway, I was like, I lost my train of thought because now I'm thinking back to scenes in that book and just how much I was chuckling to myself throughout Julian, just making comments to herself like, oh no, I don't like them. I don't like them. I totally still like them.
The lady doth protest too much. And that was
Um,
fun because it had to be a shorter book for this project, is it gave me a really interesting. I actually like constraints. I know some people who really don't like boundaries on their projects,
yeah,
which that's not a knock on them at all, but they're different people. I like a challenge
yeah.
whenever I'm writing. So knowing that like I had to fit it within this many words and these tropes and this and that, I didn't find it restricting. I found it interesting. So for me, like it was just like, yeah, to get right into the meat of their relationship. They already had a relationship. So I
Hmm.
didn't have to spin up in this book, what's their first kiss like? What's their first date like? Because they're talking about it internally and being really, really bitter.
Right.
So you could cut straight to, oh, they already had a relationship. We know they're compatible in some way, but they do hate each other now. So how does this get fixed? Um,
Yes.
which was really a lot of fun. I had never written like a second chance romance like that before, and I had a blast.
I love that. So we know that you have all these different types of characters. You have your thieves, your assassins, you got shifters, you got the motorcycle gang. Um,
Mhm.
uh,
I do have some less criminal folks, which is my Knight series, my fantasy
I was getting
series.
there, knights, and yeah.
Yeah.
What have you found to be like the character that you have loved digging into the most so far?
It's a good question. Um, let's see. It was actually Sloan, who's the non-binary con artist and double exposure, was actually interesting and difficult for me because I know it's super popular. I'm not really a billionaire or like rich to poor kind of romance person myself.
Hmm.
So digging into them as which this comes up early in the book, so it's not much of a spoiler, is that they're the child of two people who made their billions exploiting like the medical insurance industry and the opioid industry. Um, it was really interesting to me to like go into like what their life would have been like growing up and like how much influence that would be and what that was different. Because again, it's not really my type of romance. So to getting into that and seeing something new was like just trying to build their character from scratch took a lot more work than a lot of my other characters. Most of my characters just kind of show up fully formed to me. Um, and yeah, like Justine and Campbell, literally, like I didn't have to think about them at all. Like I had to construct the plots of the books, but them as characters showed up to me on for Double Exposure. Jillian immediately showed up to me. Like I had the, extremely poor girl ends up becoming extremely rich art thief, like that transition. So Sloane was a lot more complicated because I usually don't write characters like that. Or if I do, they're villains. Um, you know, it's easy to write an evil billionaire. It's less so
Yeah.
to write one who's in recovery, as it were. Um, and like what money feels like and is to that, which is that's part of their conflict with Jillian,
Yeah.
is as much as Sloane is generally nice and more personable compared to Jillian, who's kind of a little acidic. Like they don't always understand that for her, like I mean, money's life and death. That
Right.
was that was her life growing up, and they never had to deal with that. So kind of thinking that through, like that was definitely I really had to dig in there, and it was interesting.
I love that. We love a challenge. And you did say
Hmm.
that constraints, you thrive on that. So
Yes.
okay, so to touch on the nights, because that was also a question I had. Where did that come from?
So that's the other end of my taste. I honestly thought about so I have three of the books out now. There's going to be nine, I think, because I love giving myself too much work. Um, in this series, the first one is Valor and the Fair. So it's like an Arthurian second world. So it's based off that. All the names and stuff are different, but it is based off like the different King Arthur mythos and stories.
Hmm.
I really did consider at a point getting another pen name and writing those. But I was like, well, they're still sapphic and there's still this and that. So I ended up not doing it, which is fine because, I was like, I already have my audience. So
Hmm.
let's just see what happens. But yeah, that's the other end of my taste. I love knights. I love fantasy. That's what I wanted to be when I was a kid. And they're like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, a knight. And my parents were like, well, you can't do that. And I was like, well, maybe, who knows? Um, and again, it is another thing like the romantic suspense and other things like that, that like uh seeing like female knights, queer knights, and stuff like that was such a rarity
Hmm.
for me growing up. It didn't exist. It's always a one-off. There's one uh in the Fairy Queen, which is a really well-known kind of well, the author wrote it for the British Queen at the time as a gift.
What?
But it combines like all this Arthurian lore with like the matter of Britain and everything else in a gift. There's a single female knight in that book. And there's all these different knights. And of course she's the Knight of Chastity. It's like you can't have a woman in this kind of figure in time unless she's like completely pure. Um, or, is like, some kind of like evil witch figure or the like.
Yeah.
And I was just like, again, I was just pushing back that because I love the idea of like uh honorable romantic love and stuff like that, and like it clashing with duty and all of those things. I lived in Ireland for a couple of years for work.
What haven't
Um
you done?
and traveled around to the areas there and like it's so gorgeous. And writing so like, writing in that kind of surrounding and everything was really appealing. So that all came together and I was just like, sure, why not? Let's see what happens. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's been going well so far, but I definitely I realized I was like, wow, this is completely different. It's third person versus third person. It's fantasy, versus my kind of contemporary crime work. This and that. I really did consider making another pen name and then just ended up not doing it. I was like, what the hell? Who cares?
I mean, and obviously it hasn't harmed. So
Mm-mm.
there's that. I mean, like to touch on what you were saying though, it is the common theme, like even across other types of stories that are fantasy, like Xena Warrior Princess.
Yeah.
Like let's be honest. And then how many immortals did we see in oh my gosh, I cannot think of one of my favorite movies right now, which is so funny. Highlander.
Oh, I was about to say Highlander. Yeah, yeah.
Like like it was so rare. The whole thing was like his love couldn't she never immortal, like she always died. Like, oh, I
Hmm.
can't love anybody, I have to be by myself.
Did you so this is relevant because you mentioned the bikers in my we have my werewolf book, which also has a butch lesbian werewolf. Did you ever see the Underworld series, like the vampire and werewolf ones?
Yes.
Did you notice that not a single werewolf in those films is a woman?
Oh my gosh, I never thought about that.
Yeah, there's many female vampires who are pretty and immortal and pale, and there is not a single like I think their kid I think the kid of the vampire and the werewolf in that she's like a hybrid. We eventually get her like three
Yeah.
movies down. But in terms
It's
of just like pure werewolf in that first movie, there is not a single one of them that is a woman
and
because
that's
the you can't be hairy and ugly and all these other kinds of things if you're a woman, right? So you can't be a werewolf, I guess.
apparently not.
And so it was constantly running into things like that where I would grow up and be like, wow, this is cool and wow, this is interesting. But it would be stories that I loved, but stories that had no space for like who I am and who my friends are.
Hmm.
So after a point, I was like, well, I guess I got to make it myself.
Yeah. I mean, and as it should be, because obviously if there's a gap that is not being bridged, the only way that it's going to be attention brought to it is for people to start writing and talking about it, making
Mhm.
movies about it, like showing up.
Yeah, it
So,
was actually really funny because the werewolf book, it's her Wolf in the Wild. It's
mhm,
my traditionally published. Biz Harlequin picked it up. Um,
which is such a cute book too.
yeah, I had fun with it, but it was fascinating to me that it was easy to sell to people because all I would say was butch biker werewolf. My friend Kelly was making fun of me because she was just like, you have a 3-word pitch. It drives me crazy, and it works every time because everybody's like, wait, what? What? All three? Me? Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Uh, and it was enough for people just that in and of itself, just saying butch biker werewolf was unique enough that people are immediately like, okay, well, you need to tell me more about what that is.
like sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so kind of touching on that one, because that is paranormal,
Hmm.
which is different than fantasy, which is different than noir romance. What kind of pulled you in that direction? I mean, we just kind of hinted at it, of course, saying like movies and books.
Hmm.
But what?
Yeah, so it's the one book I read when I was young that did have female werewolves in it was Blood and Chocolate. Um, and it's straight, but it is it's from the perspective of a female werewolf, and she falls in love with a human guy, as you'd expect, while being pulled towards her werewolf pack because there's an older male werewolf who's into her and is basically like, come on, let's join up and lead the pack together. And she's trying to decide basically whether or not she wants to commit to the werewolf world or the human world throughout that book. And it's also the only one of the only books I've read where she doesn't pick the human.
Oh.
And I thought that that was interesting because almost all of them are like you have like one monster romance or one monster on the side, and they always pick humanity at the end, right?
Mhm.
And I was fascinated because this was the only one that wasn't. And after I read this book and enjoyed it so much when I was younger, I looked for anything else like it. And this is years and years ago because I was a teenager, but nothing. I could not find a single other book like that. That had this, and then they made a movie version of Blood and Chocolate, and it's so bad. Please don't watch it. I just so profoundly disappointed. They changed it. She ran off with the human boy.
Oh wow. They were like,
Um,
no, we don't want that.
it's just like this reversed the entire moral lesson of the book that you're supposed to be true to yourself instead of changing yourself for a guy. What happened? Um, uh, so yeah, it
Everything
was something that
happened.
in the back of my head of like this was something that was rare that I didn't have. And the interesting thing was my assassin books are small press.
Mhm.
My night books are self-published. Double Exposure is also self-published. But I was interested in being hybrid. I
Mhm.
knew I wanted some trad work. And I had seen like a Harlequin pitch thing like that, and the woman Mackenzie, who eventually became my editor, was on there and got in contact with me when I participated in the pitch event. And I realized, as funny as it is, because it's like, oh, biker werewolves, this was actually my most trad friendly idea. Um,
We
like,
know that trad does get a little picky, so
mhm. Assassin books wouldn't work because I committed the cardinal sin that Justine cheats on her husband. Um, which a lot of romance authors even, or a lot of romance readers
earned
even
it.
contextually, like that's not okay, right? You can't cheat.
And when they
Um,
deserve it, I think it's fine.
yeah, that's the thing is a lot of people who have actually read the book think it's fine, but I remember my romance mentor at the time was telling me, which
Like,
this is
oh,
before I did the small press, is she's just like, your writing is fantastic, but I can tell you, no agent will probably pick this up because you're breaking one of the cardinal rules. The MC's not supposed to
it's
cheat.
not palatable.
Hmm. So that, because of that, like I stuck with the small press. That was great. The series is finished. With the night books, I knew I wanted to get a little weird with it. There's lots of neo pronouns. There's lots of really heavy, like archaic and prose language and stuff like that. That again is not, unless it's like one of those massive fantasy, like 800,000 word blockbusters. It's not really a thing for trad. So this was like my one idea that was in the middle, like sensible length. Paranormal romance is always popular. The one werewolf is butch, but like she and the main character is a cis bisexual woman. So I was like, I have a feeling that this will be the one, and I was right.
Yeah.
Um, um, and it actually did pretty well. I'm pretty happy of it. Um, I'm looking to. I can't detail it now. But somebody at Harlequin has been in contact with me about doing something else.
Oh.
So hopefully that will be in the future.
Well, fingers crossed and all the good luck coming to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Um, so I'm just wondering what you're like, obviously you touched on this too, but what is your motivation and inspiration?
A lot of it is it's just things I've always wanted to see. I've joked with a few friends before that my books are first and foremost for me. I love when other people enjoy them and experience them with me, but it's filling just a gap that I felt for so long, growing up. I was out of the closet very young, much younger than, and now Gen G is out of the closet all the time. But when I was out at 13, I was pretty alone.
Yeah.
We're talking what, almost 20 years ago now, somehow.
Oh,
Um,
time flies.
yeah, and so it was just that I always wanted, it's been a chance to kind of reconnect with all these desires and dreams and power fantasies and everything I had when I was young and that I couldn't find no matter how I looked for. So like each book I produce is in some way kind of an indulgence to my younger self and being like, look, it's cool. Look at this cool thing we have now.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's always, I don't know, I love to write. Even if I didn't publish, even if I didn't sell them books, I would always be writing. So I feel like I might as well share them with everybody else and if they want to read.
Absolutely. Okay, I want to touch on some fun things that are unbook related. Well,
Hmm.
food.
Yes, food.
So we touched on the Chicago books. What about Chicago and food culture there is just so like it pulls you in. I need to know because I still got to make visits. This is what
Yeah,
it'll
so I grew up in San Diego, California. SoCal has its own
California.
culture. I grew up here in.
Tacos. It has tacos.
Yeah, it's right in there, fantastic Mexican food, fantastic seafood, all this other kind of stuff. But,
Yeah.
growing up there, everybody's just like, oh, California is the best in the world. We have LA and San Fran and we have this and that. And I've been to all those places.
I mean, we
But
have pretty great food. I'm from LA, so yeah,
yeah, and it's
but
like,
it's
so it's
not
like, it's
the
like, yeah, it's fantastic. But
yeah.
I never heard that about Chicago, ever. Um, and so I went to college in Indiana University. And when I was there, I ended up making a bunch of friends who lived at home in Chicago, even though they went to
Mhm.
school there. And I went to visit there, and I'd never been to Chicago before. And every time my friend would take me to somewhere else, and I was astonished that there's the sheer like width and breadth of food here. You can get basically authentic anything, almost any street, Indian food, Mexican food, Thai food, Chinese food. Like there is a neighborhood for like every single kind of cuisine in this city. It's insane.
That makes me excited.
Um, and like it's the cool thing too. It's not just expensive food. Yeah, there's 3-star Michelin restaurants and everything here. Yes, absolutely. But even the hot dogs, the pizza, like even things that would be considered like more cheap or lowbrow or whatever, you can find some stall that has been there for 50 years, and you pay $10, and it's like one of the best things you've ever eaten. Um,
Oh, I'm
yeah,
gonna
if
be in
you if
Chicago in
listen,
August, so now
if
I'm
you
like, let me find all the food.
if you ever come, I actually had a friend who was just visiting me from Ireland, so she'd never been to the United States before, and we spent the last 4 days. She left back on Thursday before we're recording this. And everything we had, she's like, I can't believe how good the food here is. She's like, it doesn't matter what we get.
Oh,
Um, and she had no American cuisine experience, so I might have spoiled her a little bit.
I mean, it's good to be spoiled because then
Mhm.
you know you have expectations and you'd like to have that good food all the time, no matter where you go.
But yeah, if you come here, if anybody from like our group and everything comes here, I will absolutely take you on a food tour. Uh, I know like any kind of food you like, you can find it here. It's always amazed me. Like there's a lot of things about the city I love. I live pretty close to the lake, uh, and it's gorgeous. The only thing is that unfortunately the parking is that bad, and the weather is whatever it wants to be.
Uh, is transportation good? Like the trains or whatever,
Yes,
subways?
see, that's the flip side. If you have a car, it sucks, but the red line will take you anywhere. I could right now get on the red line. It's a block and a half from my house. I can take the train straight to Chinatown
Oof.
and just be in like 4 blocks of the best Chinese restaurants you've ever had.
Uh,
And like even in here, you can take the red line to the blue line. The blue line stops inside the airport.
oh,
Like you can literally take the train and go into the airport, leave the country, this and that. Like you don't even need a car to go to the airport here. I love it.
I had that experience in Atlanta because two of their lines go into the airport as well. So when I went to visit Carmen Lee and Mika James a few
Hmm.
times, like it was like, y'all don't have to come get me from the airport. I
Nope.
will like, come toward y'all, and then we can link up and go from there.
Yeah. So yeah, I love it. And also like a lot of people here are just really nice. I have lived in other parts of the Midwest, and like the nice can be a little bit, you know, I don't know, biased, depending on, because the Midwest has its other issues. But like people here are really damn nice. I know all of my neighbors. I know my older woman. Um, I recently got top surgery, and the coffee shop where I go every morning, it's a small independent black owned place. They're fantastic. I've been going there for years.
Hmm.
Um, they sent me back a cup that had well wishes written all over it
Oh, I
because
love that.
they knew you're having my surgery. And again, it's like we're not friends or anything. It's not like we spend time together. They just see me every morning. We say hi. We chatted each other, ask how things are going. And because they knew I was having the surgery, they sent me a cup that's just absolutely covered in just them saying nice things.
That is so sweet. And you don't have to be friends. I worked at Starbucks years back, and I had like regulars who would come in all the time, and they were just really kind people, and we would, strike up conversations. There was
Mhm.
a deaf woman that would come in all the time, and I was the only person who could actually have a conversation with her in sign language.
Oh,
And
that's awesome.
broken because I don't know a lot of ASL, but like it was enough of a conversation that she felt seen. And so like people recognize when folks come in, so they just cared.
Yeah, but it's because I've lived in Indiana, I lived in San Diego, I've been in AmeriCorps and traveled to many, many different states. I've been to several different countries. And Chicago is the one place where it's like I really know my neighbors and know my neighborhood. Like the people who bag my groceries, like we chat with each other. It's a kind of like it's everyone. It feels like an actual community. Um, and that's cool. I don't know. I love it. I think I feel like I grew up in San Diego being like, oh yeah, you see on television or movies or whatever, that this like these like really close neighborhoods, and I didn't ever had that growing up, and then I come here and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, it's real.
So that's why you set two books there.
Yeah, it's a cool city. I feel like I don't see enough media there. I mean, it's almost always New York, LA, right?
Definitely, yeah.
Um,
Or Florida.
yeah. And it's like, and again, nothing wrong with those either places. Been to New York, been to Broadway, fantastic. Spent plenty of time in LA growing up, but it was nice to just like set it there. And I always try to really dig down into the locations where I
Hmm.
write. Like my werewolf book is set in Arizona. I lived there for a little while. My grandparents lived in Sedona.
Nice.
And like it was another place that I feel like I didn't see in media a lot. The stereotype of the werewolf is like, kind of like dark forests,
Hmm.
and not a desert, not an open desert. Um, so it was interesting to come up with, but there are actual biker gangs there. The Hells Angels actually moved their headquarters to Arizona. This is a really funny story because Sonny Barger went to prison in Arizona and he liked the state so much he moved the Hells Angels there.
I'm cackling. I did not know that's why they moved.
Yeah, of all things.
Wow. Well, to each their own.
Yeah,
Not gonna say too
but
much on that.
yeah, so there's I don't know. I like bringing in a lot of my, even if it's
No,
something like
yeah,
fantasy like the night books or paranormal like the werewolf books. I like bringing in like the locations and the places
yeah,
that I know into my
yeah,
stories. They're great.
definitely. And that makes a lot of sense. Have you ever talked to Lisa Kessler about her Sedona pack?
No, I mean, I know she has those books. She and I haven't gotten to chat about it though. I remember talking about doing another werewolf one. She's like, haha, join the club.
Y'all should chat. I think it would be fun for the Sedona, like just werewolves, but also like just talking about Sedona. I
Hmm.
think that she used to visit there a lot. She's also from San Diego.
Oh,
Um,
okay. I didn't know she was also from San Diego. Now we really got to chat.
yeah, yeah. Lisa's great. Anyway, that's way off topic. I have this is a question I like to ask everyone because I think that self-care is really important.
Hmm.
What do you do to keep yourself from reaching burnout? Like, how do you take care of yourself? I've seen, your deadlift updates, and is that therapeutic or is it a hobby? Is that something else? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, so weightlifting is a really big one for me. I have a pretty high stress day job. Um and so writing is kind of my side, like writing books is my hobby, but it's also a stressful hobby. Obviously, there's so much to manage, and writing in and of itself can be very stressful. So yeah, for me
Mhm.
it's weightlifting. It is there's a really good Henry Rollins quote where he says that he's talking about like his depression and stress and all this other kind of stuff, and that weightlifting for him is 25 pounds is always 25 pounds. It's reliable. You can show up and it will always be the same. Um, Once you have the capability of doing it, you can usually do it again. There's a lot of like
Huh.
comfort and structure in it. And I'll be honest, if you're deadlifting 300 pounds, you can't think about anything else. You can't
Not at
think about
all.
anything else. You can't think about your bills. You can't think about what somebody shitty said to you at work. You can't think about Goodreads reviews. You can't think about anything of your brain going, wow, I need to hold on to this. It's super
Yeah.
heavy. And to me, it's always just been so relaxing to do that, that even if it's hard or whatever, it's a sense of progression. That's, again, it's reliable. Like it's hard with books sometimes. Like one book does really well and the other one doesn't.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes you're having a great run at work and then sometimes you're not. Whereas with weightlifting, it's like with that deadlift thing, like I started at 135. I eventually got to 300, but
Hmm.
it was just every week 5 pounds, every week 5 pounds, and that reliable like routine, and that I could put myself into that is like, yeah, it's absolutely my biggest self-care. Again, yay, eventually at a point you can be like, you can tell people the numbers and they get impressed. Um, but a lot of it is just focusing on that and something physical, not
Mm.
screens, not um, everything's online, et cetera, et cetera. I don't let myself be online when I'm at the gym. I go to this little queer gym that's really cool. There's only allowed to be 4 people in there an hour.
Oh, wow.
So it's never loud. It's never that the machines are packed and you can't go in. Like it's a little like it's a little oasis in the middle of the city.
That's nice. That
Yeah.
sounds lovely.
Hmm.
Ooh. Okay. So back to books. Is there anything that you're working on that you can tell us about?
Yes. So I am in the editing phase of, I've been talking about this too much on Twitter, but everybody seems to like me talking about it. But I'm writing my first erotic romance
Yeah.
that is exclusively that, which is between Medusa and a trans butch basilisk. So like a version of like the mythological creature.
Hmm.
And it's called The Scales of Seduction. Um, it is 50% smut by volume. I really do mean it in terms of the erotic romance. I'm at the editing part. I'm at page, let's see. I'm at page 50 out of 102, and they are already sleeping together. The rest of the book is that. Um, but a lot of it is like a lot of ancient Greek myths and stuff I'm interested in and engaging with. I've always been a fan of the myth of Medusa. Because there's so many different takes on it. That's kind of the
Hmm.
fascinating thing about Greek myth. There's never just one story. Like
Yeah.
there's the story of, oh, she has her and her sisters and that they've always been monsters and this and this and this. But there's also the version where she was human and was pursued by Poseidon and then got turned into Medusa in Athena's temple. And so this was again my indulgence of just like, what about that? What about all these stories that I grew up with and learned about. My parents gave me lots of books on lots of different mythology when I was growing up, and I read them cover to cover.
Yeah.
So this is kind of my engagement with that. And also I kind of wanted to expand my horizons. My books tend to be high heat.
Hmm.
Um, but I would argue on somewhat of the milder side of high heat, and I wanted to go and write something that was like
Filth.
really, yeah, yeah. I wanted to, and yeah, all the way, maximum filth. How far can I go? Like, it's another challenge for me. Like, what am I comfortable with? What's difficult to write? What's interesting to write? Um, so yeah, that one is I am through my first pass edits and now doing my last pass edits before I send it to betas.
Ooh.
So I still have to send it by beta, so I don't think it'll be out before this podcast is, but I'm hoping for June because I want it to come out in Pride Month. So yeah.
The excitement level just like skyrocketed. Okay, sorry.
No, it's all good.
Like voice modulation, everything. Anyway. uh I was gonna say, oh, books. So we're talking about just, Pride Month, of course. So that is
Mhm.
coming up. Are there books that you're looking forward to that haven't come out yet? That
Oh
you're
my God,
like
which
super
one?
excited
Somebody, my friend, this is the problem. My friends keep sending me books from Trad that I'm immediately interested in, and then I see the release date is projected to be 2025 or 2026, and it
for?
hurts me so much. And I'm like, oh no. It's like, but no, I want it now. What if I don't remember?
Right? Ugh.
Right now though, it's not a romance, but it's from an author that I really like. Seth Dickinson wrote The Trader Baru Cormorant and that series, which is well known. It has a lesbian MC, but it's not a romance. It's kind of a dark, kind of like a dark fantasy kind of one. But
Mhm.
he had his first sci-fi book come out,
Hmm.
called Exordia, which so far is about a woman having a bad breakup and an alien with a voice like Kate Blanchett. Um, well, literally described in the book as has Kate Blanchett's voice. And like it's both surreal and very funny, and it's just kind of talking about the modern human condition, but also with aliens and dimensional travel and everything else. So that's what I'm reading right now.
That sounds really cool.
Let me see if I can find any of the ones that were coming out yet, because I know.
It's there's a lot. Or even something that has come out and you haven't read yet that you're looking forward to. I'd be down for that. I'm
Oh,
big
right.
down for
Yeah.
action myths.
Hamajang Luck is going to be coming out at the end of this year. And it's supposed to be extremely good. It's another sapphic book. I believe it's science fiction. Yeah, yeah, everything I've heard. I finding science fiction that is a mix of adult, sapphic, and sci-fi is so hard that whenever I see
Mhm.
something that's trifecta, I just zoom in, I add it to the library as soon as I can.
So have you heard of This Ravenous Fate by Haley Dennings.
Yeah, I have heard that's good. Is it out yet?
No, it comes out in August. I'm looking forward to that one.
I
It's
think I
historical
saw a friend
fantasy and
on
sapphic.
Twitter who had an ARC and they were
Oh,
raving.
I actually, you know what? I actually just asked for the arc on NetGalley. So
Fingers crossed. You have
yes.
to tell me if you get it. You have to tell me because
Yes.
that is absolutely what I've been looking forward to.
Yeah. Carmen Lee was like, hey, they're doing ARCs. It's on NetGalley. Go now. And I was like, what?
Yeah, it's like now, before anybody else gets it.
So yeah, definitely I will let you know how that
Oh,
is.
right, because yeah, that one's the one in sets in Jazz Age Harlem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hell yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
love when people mix like historical with
Yeah.
like either like paranormal or fantasy or something else. I always am incredibly impressed whenever people can like make those mesh together and it feels
And it's
realistic's the
very
wrong word. I guess immersive.
immersive is, yeah, that's a good word.
Yeah.
It puts you in the setting.
Mhm. Yeah, like both of those are hard. Like historical, like good paranormal and good historical are both hard. So like managing to meld them together into one thing, like I don't know, that's always impresses me. That's got some talent.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So my other question, are you doing any type of reader events or podcasting things or anything that folks can catch you? The event that is mentioned is actually in the past because we recorded this toward the beginning of May.
Yes. I am going to one second. I am going to be on a panel at Love Sweet Arrow, which is a bookstore here in Illinois. It's not quite in Chicago. It's a little bit more out in the suburbs area, but it's a romance only bookstore.
Oh,
And May 11th at 12:30 p.m. I'm going to be in the panel with Gloria Chow and Mia Manansala. And I think we're mostly going to be doing like talking about some romantic suspense and some other things. But I'm really hyped. That's going to be like my first kind of like in-person event. Um, I went to one at LSA before and it was great. Tamara Jure, I went to their promo event for their Angel Demon Black Sapphic romance. Have you heard of their work?
I haven't. We're gonna have to connect after and get more. I need more on that.
Yeah, their book, they had just had a book come out called A Wolf Steps in Blood, but The Fall That Saved Us is the Angel Demon romance. And so I got to go to their book premiere there at LSA and got to meet the really nice folks there. And they asked if I wanted to be on a panel, because I'm a local author also. So that's what I'm going to be doing in May. I'm really excited.
Sounds okay. Look, I'm like clicking things. Like, let me go find this book.
Yeah, no, here,
Oh, I found it. I
yeah,
found it.
yeah. Tamara's a huge sweetheart. They're also local, so we hang out sometimes. But their work is really, really good.
Nice. Oh, that cover is beautiful.
Right? Right?
Uh,
Yeah, no, both of the covers, like they have a couple versions because The Fall That Saved Us ended up in a couple of book boxes, so there's some really gorgeous ones. But A Wolf Steps in Blood is like so sharp.
yes. Oh my goodness.
Highly recommend.
Yeah, no, I'm ready for it. I like it's in Alabama. Like, how many books are set in Alabama?
I think that's where they're from originally, also.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love reading books where it's not somewhere that you typically see because then you
Hmm.
can actually get immersed in a place that you've never been.
Yep.
I
Same.
love being able to see the setting come to life. Like I paint pictures when I read, and so when it's really well described, it's so much more entertaining to me. Not that if it's not described, I'm like, oh, I'm putting this book down, but it's just like it's a different vibe.
It's a nice bonus, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
they also love Blood and Chocolate a lot. We connected on that, which is why they did their werewolf book. So I was like, haha, I feel this. We
see?
both read this when we were like 14 and it changed our brain chemistry.
You gotta love that though, because then you find your people and like those are your people.
Yep.
So before we wrap up, there's one
Hmm.
question that I didn't ask. And obviously, like we've talked about this, so I think I have a good idea of how you might answer. But what is your favorite type of story to write?
That's actually really hard. Like I love writing from trans and non-binary perspectives, obviously, because I feel like there's always more. There's never enough.
Hmm.
And I
Agreed.
like engaging with both that part of myself and in my community and stuff by writing that. Um, I love taking tropes that people like have an expectation for and then twisting it. Like I love engaging with, like we talked about the femme fatale and this and that, or
Mhm.
like the cold biker, this and that. I love taking something like that and just like twisting it or moving it a little to the left. It can be all kinds of different tropes, it can be all kinds of different stories, but like I love taking what people think is the expected and then they read it and they're like, whoa, this went in a completely different direction than I thought. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
always cool.
All right. Yeah, I see that a lot in your work, so I agree. What is the best way for folks to connect with you if they want to follow what you got going on or just kind of be lurkers?
I am still unfortunately on Twitter, which my username on there is Rae and Gray. It's RIENGRAY. That's it. Same thing on Instagram. Um, I'm pretty much just on those two. I'm also on Blue Sky, same username, mostly stuff that gets cross-posted there.
Mhm.
If you want to join my newsletter, it's subscribepage.io/Rand Gray. You can get a free novella. My book, Strip of Velvet, is a short paranormal romance, pretty high heat. You can get that for free if you sign up. And yeah, that's kind of where all my book updates go.
Oh, Rian, it was great. I love chatting with you.
Oh, it
Um,
was so nice. It's so nice to chat with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So until next time, this has been Ray's Corner. Bye.
Goodbye.